Build Back Better Act addresses the rising cost of both child care and elder care, which would help ensure that both my young son, my daughters, and my aging parents are taken care of with dignity, grace, and understanding.
You got to give these folks a little bit of breathing room. The single greatest champion for elder care in the United States of America is this guy right here, Bobby Casey. Not a joke. Not a joke. The way it works right now, if you qualify for Medicaid, you have to have a lower income to qualify for Medicaid, not Medicare, Medicaid. There are 820,000 seniors, people with disabilities who are on Medicaid on a waiting list to get home care, which they're entitled to. How many families are living this story? Their parents get older, they need some help getting around the house, making the meals for themselves, don't want to put them in nursing homes, not only because of the cost, but because of a matter of dignity. They do better, they live longer if they can stay in their own home. But you also don't have the time or the money to take care of them at home to do it. So you're just looking for an answer. So your parents can keep living independently. And if they hold here a second, one of the things that is important, think about this. In order to get into that nursing home, you got to sell everything you have. You can't have any private property. You have to empty your bank account. You have to do it all to move in a nursing home. I'm not saying nursing homes aren't valuable, they are. They're extremely valuable. But that's not where, I remember my uncle was moved in with his wife into a assisted living center, and the folks who had built the facility, it was a lovely facility in Delaware, asked if I'd come and speak on the opening of it. And we're walking out and I said, "Mom, isn't this beautiful?" She looked at me and said, and she was then 76 years old, she said, "This is for old people, Joey. Not for me." But think about it. For millions of families, this is the most important issue they're facing. It's personal. It's personal. And Bob Casey gets it. When Bobby fights for something, he never gives up, in case you haven't noticed. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to expand services for seniors so families can get help with well-trained, well-paid professionals to help them take care of their parents at home, to cook a meal for them, to get them their groceries when they need to get groceries, to help them get around, to just put in railings on their home. My mom lived with me. She moved in with me. We finally talked her into doing it. And guess what? My sister takes her up. You remember this. Jeannie remembers this, talking about this too. She takes her up to get her prescriptions, drives her back, gets out of the house, and it was this little home off of our home. She wouldn't physically move into the house, even though we'd done the whole thing over for her. And she's just standing there and moves and breaks her hip. She didn't trip or anything, broke her hip. Well, guess what? Just having a railing, just having a place where she could walk from one room to the other, and help them in their own home with the dignity they deserve. Quite frankly, what we found is that this is more popular than anything else I'm proposing. When you do this individual polling data, this is extremely popular because we all feel that obligation to our parents, and we want them to live with dignity. Look, because American people understand the need. It's a matter of dignity, it's a matter of pride. Look, that's what both these initiatives are all about. And frankly, they're about more than giving working families a break. They're about positioning our country to compete in the long haul. Economists left, right, and center agree. Earlier this year, the Wall Street outfit Moody's projected that the investments I'm talking about will create, for the next 20 years, on average, 2 million additional jobs per year. Good paying jobs. It's transformative. And we can make these transformation investments and be fiscally responsible. Take the infrastructure bill. All those investments, road, bridges, high-speed rail, internet, the whole deal, they represent less than 0.5% of our economic growth each year. Less than 0.5%. And the cost of the Build Back Better bill in terms of adding to the deficit is zero. 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 Because we're going to pay for it all. In addition to that, half of it is a tax cut. It's not spending money, it's a tax cut for working class people. It's about time, as I said, and I come from the corporate state of the world. Not a joke. More corporations are registered in my state than every other state in the United States combined. And I represented the state of DuPont, as they used to call it, for 36 years. I'm not anti-business, but I'm about just begin, pay your fair share. Look, folks, under this proposal, and under this proposal, these proposals I'm talking about, I guarantee you that no one making under $400,000 a year will see one single penny in tax go up. Not one. In fact, the plan cuts taxes for working people. And by the way, if you notice the way you usually pay for infrastructure is by gasoline taxes, I wouldn't allow that because that would tax people making under $400,000. I'm a man of my word. Not one single penny will you pay if you make less than $400,000. So, but there's no reason why someone making $400 million a year. By the way, during this, all the crisis we've had with COVID, there's an absolute finite number of billionaires they can count up in the tax code. You know how much money the billionaires made last year collectively? They're not bad guys. I'm not saying that. They made $1 trillion increase their collective income. $1 trillion. Just pay your fair share. If you are a multimillionaire or billionaire, you have a lower tax rate than a family that has a teacher and a firefighter as a percent of taxes you pay. Lower. As I said, 55 our largest corporations pay zero in income tax, $40 billion. This needs to change. Working folks understand that. That's why, despite the attacks of misinformation about my plans, are still overwhelmingly supported by the American people. They understand that when families have a little breathing room, America's in a better spot. And they know this is about dignity and respect, about building an economy from the bottom up and the middle out, not from the top down. As I said, name me a time in American history when the middle class has done well, the wealthy haven't done very well. Name me a time. So let me close with this. For too long, working people of this nation, the middle class in this country, the backbone of the country, have been dealt out. It's time to deal them back in. I ran for president saying it was time to rebuild the backbone of the nation. And by that I was very precise. The middle class has been the backbone of this nation. I couldn't have been any clearer. That's why I wrote both these bills in the first place and took them to the people. I campaigned on them. The American people spoke. They have no doubt about what I ran on. Both these bills were all what I talked about. But guess what? 81 million people voted for me. More people voted than any time in American history. And their voices deserve to be heard, not to be denied, or worse, be ignored. Because here's what I know. If we make the investments, there's going to be no stopping America in the remainder of the 21st century. I've long said, and I mean this to every world leader I've known, and I've now spoken to over 60 of them. And I've known them, many of them before that. I tell them, it's never, ever, ever been a good bet to bet against America. No, never. Never, never. Which means it's always a good bet to bet on America. And that's what these initiatives do. They bet on America. It's about believing in the American people. About believing. Just look at the history of the journey of this nation. What becomes clear is this. Given half a chance, the American people have never, ever, 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 ever let the country down. Just a fighting chance. No guarantees, just a chance. And that's what this is all about. And it does not increase the debt. When you talk about the number, we shouldn't even talk about the numbers because it's all paid for, written in the same piece of legislation. So you pass the spending, you're also passing the tax cuts, and you're passing the taxes that are going to be increased. The vast majority of the jobs in my infrastructure bill don't require a four-year degree. 98% don't require a four-year degree. Guess what, though? It's the ultimate blue-collar, middle-class renewal. Real, serious work. It needs to get done. But folks, it isn't enough just to invest in our physical infrastructure. We also have to invest in our people, which we always did. We invested in our people. That's why the second bill is the so-called Build Back Better plan. And here's what it does. It takes education. As I said, when America made 12 years of public education standard a century ago, it gave us the best educated, best prepared workforce in the world. And you saw what happened. Think of what happened after World War I and how America moved. Because we were the best educated overall country in the world. And we led in the 20th century. But as I said earlier, we know that 12 years is not enough any longer to compete in the 21st century. Study after study shows that earlier our children began to learn, the better for themselves, their families, and for the nation. You know, you all know the statistics, and some of your teachers and your husband used to talk to me about this, and it was really basic, that if you come from a home where the mom or dad have books on the shelves and on the coffee table and read, and you come from a home where mom or dad can't read or has a sixth grade education or has a little difficulty, the child coming from the middle class home is going to have heard 1 million more words spoken, not different words, spoken, than the child coming from a middle class home. And that's because, look, what do you all do? You all know with your children and grandchildren. You start talking to them when they're in the cradle. You engage them. They're the people who sit at the dinner table and still talk. They're engaged. So many homes, mothers or fathers don't have the capacity or inclination to do that. But right now, what are we doing? We're lagging behind. Today, only about half of the 3- and 4-year-olds in America are enrolled in early education at all. Germany, France, the UK, Latvia, their number is over 90% of the children. It's not just early education. According to one study, we rank 12th among advanced economies when it comes to percentage of our young people who've attained any sort of post-high school degree. Ranked 12th in the world. The Build Back Better plan gets us back on track. We'll make 2 years of high-quality preschool available to every child in America. Every child. And we're going to make investments in education beyond high school. That includes increasing Pell Grants, which nearly 200,000 students in Pennsylvania from low-income families rely on to attend college. We're going to increase it by $500 up to so it becomes $1,900. The bill invests in our workforce, providing much-needed breathing room for families. My dad I remember when we moved to Wilmington, we finally were able, after 4 years, Dad could buy a house. And we lived in a quoted development. It was a lovely area, in a suburban area, but it was a 3-bedroom split-level home. And we had 4 kids and my grandpa who lived with us, or another relative for all those years we lived there. And my bed was up at my headboard, we didn't have a headboard, but my bed was up against the wall that was when my dad and mom's bed was up against the wall. And I look back, it was great for us having grandpops and relatives there. I don't know how my parents quite did it, but I remember one night, I'm serious, it was in high school, and Dad, I could feel my dad was restless, he'd move, and I could hear it in bed. And I asked the next morning, I asked my mom, it's a true story, I said, what's the matter with Dad, Mom? How can we compete in a world of millions of American parents, especially moms, can't join the workforce because they can't afford the cost of child care? I got a phone call before I got sworn in when I was hiring staff saying my wife and daughter had just been killed. After a little bit, they gave up their home. I came home one night and they moved into my home, helped me raise $100. Victorian out of those classes for the last tax cut for parents. Everybody talks about, and by the way, I'm going to say something self-serving, but I got on pretty well in the Senate for all those years. A lot of Republican friends as well as Democratic friends, for real. Kind of like Bobby. I mean, they're friends. We used to travel together a lot. And here's the deal, though. You know, what I was able to do when we passed the American Rescue Plan in the first month of my administration, which has allowed us to have all the funding for COVID. And when I started off, there were 2 million people in America that had gotten a vaccine. Well, guess what? We're up to 190 million. That's how we got it paid for. But here's the deal. What it meant was that, you know, right now, there's a whole new attitude that's out there. How do we not invest? So in that act that we passed, we provided for a child tax credit. And you heard my introducer speak to it. Because we're in such dire straits, we were able to put in a position a tax cut for middle-class people. That's what it is. No one has a tax cut when we want to cut the capital gains tax for the wealthy or anybody. No one has a problem when we deal with that. We have over 55 corporations in America, the Fortune 500, don't pay a single solitary penny in taxes. Not 1 cent. Not 1 cent. They make $40 billion a year. But when you talk about a tax cut for middle-class people, and that's exactly what it is. By what we did, increasing or making a refundable tax cut, you know, the way it works now, if you're made enough money to owe more than $4,000 in taxes and you had 2 kids, you got to deduct it. And here's the deal. The fact of the matter is that if you didn't make that kind of money, you didn't get the benefit at all. It wasn't refundable. You didn't get the benefit at all of the tax cut. Because if you didn't have more than $4,000 in taxes, you didn't, you know, you still paid. And it wasn't refundable. You didn't get it back. Well, here's the way we work it. We said, all right, for temporarily what we're going to do is make sure there's a child care tax credit. If you had 1 kid under 7, you get $3,600 a year. And if you have 1 over 7 to 17, you get $3,000 a year. We upped it from $2,000. Well, guess what? It's cut child poverty in Pennsylvania by 55%, in the nation by 50%. It's a flat-out tax cut for ordinary people. That's what it does. I make no apologies for it. But look, folks, there's so many things that we can do to change the way in which we work all of this. And I realize I'm going on here, but the fact is there's so much at stake. So much at stake. Look, the fact is that most of all what it does is, you know, we have a sandwich generation that exists. And many of you are part of that generation. You have a mom or dad needs some help as you get older, and you have a child that needs some help if you're going to be able to be in the workforce. And it's hard as hell to make it work.